Parallax effect is nothing but anything that is closer to you looks like it's moving faster, but anything that is further than you looks like it's moving slower. For example, if you were traveling by a car, you would see that the moon looks like it's moving slower than the buildings in front of you. This allows you to create some parallax effect. For example, this example website, you could see that stuff moves a bit differently based on our scroll. So this one goes left and each of them are moving at different speed. You could see this one is moving, and just adding slight movements like this which moves at different speed gives like a lively feel to your website. And one of the primary movement is our scroll. So when I scroll up and down, that's the primary movement which is already there, and secondary movement is just stuff that is moving, and adding this secondary movement allows you to create some parallax effect like this, which are pretty easy to do even if you do not have Elementor Pro. So let me show you guys some examples before we start making. So this is one site where if I scroll down, you could see the background images start scaling, whereas this stays simple like this. It kind of gives you like a nice view or nice experience. So you could see how this moves. This scrolls up. So these secondary movements allow you to create some lively websites. And you could see there are like slides movement. You could see in this one, as I scroll down, this gets stuck at the top, and then the next part comes from the next section like this. And this one also allows you to give like nice movement. So how about we start making? So I'm working on a template for time being, and I decided to do some secondary motions in this one. So you could see this is what I've added for time being, and I'll probably play around with the values in future to make it look a bit nicer. But you could see that as I move down and up, it does some secondary motions. And obviously if you were having Elementor Pro, you can simply just select your elements and just use the motion effect, but it is a bit limited currently. So if you go into the advanced, go into motion effects, around here go to scrolling effects, you would see we have some vertical scroll, horizontal scroll, transparency, blur, rotate, scale. And this is cool, but with the method that I'm using, which is GSAP, you can actually control a lot more stuff, and also it gives you like much more higher control than using this one. I've never used this one, so I get confused how this works. So you could see how this is moving right now. When I've used this one, we can change the direction up and down. Similarly, there's like horizontal scroll which makes it go left and right like this. There's transparency which makes it go from 0 to 100, 0 to 1 like this. There's blur effect, basically makes something blurry, and when it comes into wave it makes it completely visible. We can do all of this stuff with GSAP for free. Again, this video is not for Elementor Pro, right? This is only for Elementor Pro, and we want to make it with free Elementor. And also, even if you have Elementor Pro, I have Elementor Pro, but I still use GSAP to make my animations, simply because it gives me much more control over Elementor Pro's motion effect. But if you're planning to get Elementor Pro, you could use the link in description to get it. Even if you don't plan to get Elementor Pro, just use the link in description. That way it supports me, and you would be able to use lots of this stuff, which is like free templates that Elementor provides. So first thing first, I'm just going to remove all the code that I've added. You could see I've completely removed all the animations that were around here. If I scroll down, there's some extra animation that I'm planning to make in this template. I'll also make videos in future, so if you want to check this, then consider subscribing whenever this gets shown or when these videos pop up. Now first thing first, to run GSAP on our website, we need to actually add the GSAP library. So just to go into Google, search for GSAP CDN, go into this website CDN.js, select this one, and then probably add it somewhere. So for me, what I've done is I've basically created this HTML widget around here on top and just pasted it in here. You could do it anywhere, it doesn't have to be the way I've done it, but basically just make sure to add it at the top somewhere, so that any code that you add with GSAP should be at the bottom, and that way you could see if I've added the code around here, right? And then anything I add on GSAP where there's like GSAP code in here and GSAP code in here, I don't have to worry about it not working. So the way we add is by simply choosing HTML widget like this and pasting the CDN which we copied from, clicking on this middle one and add it here. Then we scroll down and we also use scroll trigger. That way we can attach our animations, GSAP animations, to our scroll. and then just basically paste it like this. Now because I have multiple animations on a single page, I like to keep it in like one single container on top, and then basically I can just go in here and then make it hidden so that it doesn't get used. And then I can even hide it here. So even though it looks around here, it's not going to be visible in the main page, and this GSAP CDN would basically make it work to our whole page. Now in my hero section, which is this one, where I want to make this one go up and make this one go down as I scroll, right? So I'm going to go into my hero section and add an HTML widget where we would add the GSAP code. So first thing first, I'll choose my image, go into advanced, and then add a CSS class. So for this one, I've given it as DMHeroImage1, and the second one I've given it as DMHeroImage2. So it's your choice what you want to give the CSS class. This is what I've given. I'm just going to copy it, go into my HTML, which is like empty right now, and let's start typing. So I'll type style and then type dot DMHeroImage. And when you type style like this, it allows you to add a CSS even if you don't have Elementor Pro. So we could just use this one, and then I'll do comma dot DMHeroImage2 because that's both of them, and then type transition none important. The only reason we do this is because Elementor adds like some transition code by default, and we don't want that to be used because we want to control our animation timing with GSAP. So if we don't add this, it might be a bit buggy, so keep that in mind. So just keep that in mind that any element that you want the animation to work on, just add transition none important. That way we overwrite whatever Elementor has added. You don't need to do that if you are not using Elementor. In our script, we will type GSAP2, and I've already explained what GSAP2, GSAP from, and all the GSAP stuff that I know. And if you want to learn animation of websites in much more detail, then watch this video. It's really good, and it goes on the basic. So there are two options, GSAP.from and GSAP.to. Basically, if I use from, then whatever I add in here would be my initial state, and if I use to, then whatever we add in here would be our final state. Don't worry if you don't understand, let's just keep following, so you will know what it means. I then open the bracket. Inside the bracket, I would type single quotations and then do dot DMHeroImage because we are using CSS classes and I want to control this image. I want this one to go up a bit as I scroll down, and for that I can make the Y value, which is Y, and this is X, right? Left to right is X. I can make the Y value be like -100, and you could say it suddenly went up, but a good practice is always check in the preview page because in the editor it does not show the right animations and all. If I now play, you could see I now have an animation running, which basically makes it go down to up to this location. Now I don't want this animation to run instantly. For that we added scroll trigger, right? So remember I said to copy this. This one allows you to attach our animation based on its location. For example, if this section was below here, and then let's say our user takes like 5 seconds to go down like this, the animation would have already completed. We don't want that. We want the animation to only run when it is in the viewport. For that we use scroll trigger. So I've already added a Y -100. I'm going to go in here and type scroll trigger. I've gone into more details in that video, so check that out. I'll do scroll trigger, open curly bracket, close curly bracket. So you cannot see what this is actually, but if I type in here, this is what I've typed, okay? Like this curly braces. In this we type trigger, and the trigger is which element should be checked for the animation to start and stop. So basically I want my trigger to be same as this image. You could keep like different one too, but usually you would be using the same stuff that is around here. So I'm going to make this as my trigger point. Don't worry if you don't understand, you will soon understand it. Then we will do comma. I want something to be at start. So for start we can add two values. So if I do 50% and do 50%, the first value is for our trigger element, which is 50%, which will be in center of this one, and the second one is our viewport, which is this much. So this is our viewport, so 50% would be in center. If I made this start to be 0, then it would check the top part of our image. 50% would be here, 100% would be around here, Again, the second one is for a viewport, so the top one would be 0%, 50% around here, and then the 100% would be at the bottom of this one. Basically, we are saying that this 50% of this image, when it connects with the 50% of a viewport, then we want the animation to run. Don't worry if you don't understand, I'll show you soon. So if I do this one, and there's something called markers. If I do markers to be true, like this, if I type markers true, make sure to add a comma in here. Okay, so scroll trigger, and then we add a comma in here. We do not add comma at the last element. So for example, if I type something like rotate 30 degree or something like rotate 30 degree, then you could see that I didn't add a comma at the last element, but I did add the comma around here. So just keep that in mind. And you could see it is messed up. Even though if I removed this stuff, it is still messed up, which is why I say to publish, to refresh, based on to check the latest one always, or always do the preview page. And now you could see one thing that happened. Okay, so let me just go in here. On top of this one, I'm just going to add some like height so that it is not doing instantly, so that we can know what the start value just did. So like I said, the second value, which is this one, which is the second value in here, which is 50%, it is added to the scroller start. So this one is at the center of our viewport. If I scroll down, you would see that this start is at the center of our trigger element, which was this one. When these two touch, the animation starts. You could see this basically allows you to make sure that the animation that you're doing does not start instantly as soon as the page load. It only starts when it touches each other. Now I'm going to do end like this, and I'm going to make it 50% again, which is like the trigger center, which is 50%, and I'll make this around 0%. So at the top, make sure to add a comma in here and not at the last element. So my scroller start is actually around behind this element, which is why it's not visible. But remember, you could see around it says scroller end like this. It's a bit messy around here, which is why I say like publish, refresh to remove all this stuff, to reset it. But basically the scroller start is behind our top bar, which is why it's not being visible. And you could see the end trigger is at the same location, which was at the center. Now what I want is that instead of having this animation run instantly like this, I want the animation to be till this area. So if I just go in here and type something like scrub true, and again, if the code is not working, just copy this and paste in ChatGPT or DeepSeek, and then ask why the code is not working, and it would give like you missed this comma, you placed this stuff wrong, or something like this. So again, I just did scrub true, and this one basically allows the animation to run based on your scroll movement. So if I go down, you would see that the animation is working, but it is going up and down based on it. So let me make this one, instead of Y, let's make this X, because that would be like much more easy to see. You could see it is based on my scroll. So when this end point touches the end point, which is around here, the animation is finished. And when it starts around here, it goes from like this location to this location. It would go from Y minus 100, because that's what we added. Now based on our scrub, we can actually add some nice animation. So let's do Y minus 100. I want this one to go up like this, and instead of typing scrub true, I'll do scrub 1. And what we are basically saying is that add some 1 second delay for our scrub. So it would add some 1 second delay. I'm completely going to remove this code, so we don't have to scroll. You could say it's already doing some movement because the start is already up, and you could see there's a slight delay which makes this a smooth movement. You would see, so you could see this element is going at different space than this element, and all we simply are doing is we are moving this up and down. Similarly, this one has been given DM hero image 2. All I simply need to do is copy this code, paste it in here, and I'm simply going to change this to be 2, change the trigger element to be 2, and here I'm going to make, let's just remove the markers, like let's do false, so that we only see the marker of this one, and I'm going to make this be 100. Let's do 200 so that it goes like a lot at the bottom. And that's how you do basically, where you give like different values so that it moves at different speed, or at least it looks like it's moving at different speed. And you can see how this works. But you could see that this is moving, but this one is not moving because this is not touching yet. You can see because the scroll start and start should touch, and here this is not touching yet. So the animation kind of does not feel good, right? Which is why what we can do is we can make the scroller start at the bottom around here. So remember, the second value is what controls where the start and end point is basically. Sorry, the second value controls start, and the second value of end controls where the scroller end is. And now you could see the animation starts instantly because this 2 has already crossed like this. So now this one just gave like a nice animation which moves at different pace. I'm going to make this to be 50. So I just refresh the page to make it look better. And you could see the animation where this moves a slightly below. This one moves like a lot up like this. Now you could do anything that you want. For example, any CSS code that you want that you could add around here. So if I go in here, and then if you want to do opacity, you could do opacity. You could add any X value, rotation, blurriness, any CSS property like color or anything that you want. So let's copy this one and let's do it for these images. So this image has been given DM image 2 img1. This is img2, img3, img4. In this one, I'm just going to add the HTML widget like this. Let's go into responsiveness and hide it so that it does not take any space. And we can simply just hide it from our editor too, like this. Let's do is TypeScript, and let's copy this. All I simply need to do is change this one to be img1 like this one, and let's do X instead of Y. So let's do X, and let's bring it from -50 like this. And I'm just going to copy this much, paste, 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 and simply going to change this to 2. Also, I forgot to do one more thing in here, which is we need to change the trigger value too. Okay, so the trigger should be this one. And you could see the trigger has been changed. So I just added the animation, which is I made this to be X -50. I made this one to be Y -50. So this one would come from top, or this would go to the top. This one would go from the right, and this one would basically go from the bottom. So let's do and see. So you can see it is a bit buggy when you use markers, right? So we need to like refresh it again and again. Kind of annoying when working with GSAP, but it works. So that's all we need to know. And you could see the one issue, that is I have used 2, right? So actually this is doing perfectly as I have coded basically. This one goes from this location to left. This one goes to the top as I scroll up and down. This one goes to the right, and this one goes around here. So what I want to do is, rather than using 2, I would use from. So if I change this to from like this, it would start from this one. So rather than starting from here and going to -50, it would start from X -50 and go whatever location was set around here. So let's do from, and let's do from. Let's go down and let's do from for or 4 of it. So now if I scroll down, you can see it is now coming from that location to the final location, which is this one around here. Looks cool, right? Obviously I can add some X movement too around here for this one. So if I do, let's say X equal to 100, something like this, like adding comma around here. And if I do, let's say opacity for this one, you could see how this comes from opacity 0. So one thing to keep in mind, that when you're using like GSAP or anything, make sure to like remove your cache and then refresh it after publishing, and because sometimes it just does not refresh it well. So right now you could say it works perfectly, but for a few minutes it was not working well because it was not running the code perfectly. It basically just requires like nice refresh and then clearing your caches. if you have a cache plugin. But you could see this basically allows you to add those animation that we've seen. Now one more thing that we saw was like when this gets sticky and then as we scroll down, the second section starts going above this one. We can simply do this by, let's say, go into your hero, and I've given this hero container DM hero CSS class, and it's very easy to do, so make sure to give it transition none, especially for containers. Usually even if you do not give it for images and all, it still works, but for containers you have to give it, else it would just not work. And I'll do transition DM hero transition none important like this, and in my GSAP I'll go in here and then type GSAP 2 DM hero open curly brackets, add the semicolon, and here we will just type a scroll trigger open curly braces. In here we type a trigger, which is our DM hero like this. Then we will type our start. Our start should be 0 and this one should also be 0, and I'll do end, and here I will type plus equal to 200%, oh sorry 100%. What it basically means is that whatever the height of this one is, so whatever the height of our DM hero is, and I've given this DM hero the height of 100 VH, and 100 VH is basically like this 100 VH, it basically means like full height of our screen. And what it would basically do is that it would do that 100% plus 100%. So what it would do is basically it would take that height plus 100% of that height. So let's say if I type here 100 pixels, it would do 100 VH plus 100 pixels. But if I do 100%, we are basically saying that take that height and then add the same height again to it. Okay, then type pin true, and if you do pin true, it basically sticks it. Make sure to do scrub true like this. It's a bit laggy, I need to refresh this in case it is like too laggy. And inside of this we will add one more stuff which is called pin spacing. Make sure S is capital, so pin spacing, and let's do false. Make sure no comma at the end because that's the final element. So keep that in mind. Trigger start 0 end plus 100%, basically it would be sticky double the size of the screen, and if you do 200 it would basically take that height plus 200%, which is like it would add like 2 times the height again. Then do pin true, scrub true, pin spacing false. You could add markers to see what that does. Make sure to go into your second element, so this one, and make sure to give it a background color like this, else it would not be nicely visible. And as I scroll down, you could see what just happened. This one is sticky like I showed in that example, which means that you could even add like more animation. So you could see the animation still works, so you could make it go like left and right. If you have something like mountains in there, then you could make it go left and right. You could see this animation looks nicer. And yeah, that is how you basically create a parallax effect pretty easily. You have to just remember this much stuff, which is this much, and then you could add any value, any CSS property in here. If you want to scale down the background image slower than the rest of the stuff, you could do that. You could even do opacity, any CSS styling that you want, you could do that. If you need any help with any design, then just let me know in the comments and I'll give you the CSS code, which is very basic. CSS is very basic, you can learn it like very fast. So yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching and goodbye.